Welcome to another edition of the Gamer Gambit, where a fateful roll of the dice will fill you with awe or indifference. Corey will be covering Skeletris by Ghast tonight, and I'll try Ganbare Super Strikers by Rese.
So this is Skeletris. It is a combination of a kind of like a little dungeon crawler of sorts, um, with a puzzle-based equipment system. And the puzzle-based is the tris in Skeletris. It's like Tetris. So you basically wander around and kind of minimum control set, but you attack other creatures and get abilities or get Tetris blocks, and then you take up that Tetris block and put it into your inventory. And then you get when you mouse over that ability, you have your stats that are there in the box, and modifies your stats. So as you continue through, you will get more and more of these blocks, and as you go through the game, you get more and more blocks, and you stack them up. It was interesting playthrough. It's not too much of a story. So you do meet some characters, and they give you a little bit of backstory. Kind of reminds me of Hollow Knight in a sense, where in Hollow Knight you're a whole bunch of worms. In this, you are a whole bunch of like undead or skeletons. So you meet a couple of characters, and you meet the same character a couple of times, but generally you don't meet your first character until you get to what I'm going to call in between 1-3 and 2-1. If you remember those old kind of like Mario World naming convention, right? World 1-1, 1-2, 1-3. So this cave area or whatever is 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, and then you get a intermediary, and then you go into 2-1, 2-2. So the music changes when you get there, and you get a little bit of piece of the story. So you eventually get to a town of sorts after you save the town from a spider, which is one of the bosses. And so from a story perspective, I gave it a 0. I didn't make it all the way to the end of the game to kind of close out the story, but there's no real like to your character or who you are, or anything like that, any kind of motivation that you might have outside of you're just here and some stuff happened and you're in the middle of it, and you might as well just go to the next level, and you're helping other skeletons or whatever else. You have no tie-in to this other than you just showed up, almost kind of like a Diablo in a sense, maybe, where you show up and you find a lot about Tristram and Diablo, but really it's like you're just this merc that shows up and stuff goes down, but this doesn't even have that. Yeah, this doesn't even have that depth. You just end up at the next place, and this is the raw footage where I was messing around with some of the mechanics and died multiple times in the beginning.
Right.
But that's fine.
I really like the way that they did the light around Skeletris. I think that's pretty innovative.
Yeah, so I'll roll that into the mechanics then. So the mechanics, I gave it a 1. I really liked the messing around with your inventory, and since this is the raw footage, I'll skim through till later. So you get to a point where not only are you playing Tetris with your inventory, but you're also playing with your equipment, but you're also playing Tetris with your inventory. So you can see how I have to manipulate all of the blocks to fit in like health potions, the different potions they have.
Yeah.
And here I'm in the swamps, so I've already beat the first boss and saved the town, but then there's additional stuff. You only get one, it seems like one save at the end of every, I'll say, kind of world. So at 1-3 you'll get a save, and 2-3 you'll get a save. And the anywhere in between, when you die, there's no like saving at any point. So it was frustrating. I liked the challenge, but at a couple instances I got lucky in the random drops, if you will, the random stats on the drops. I got, maybe, I don't want to say more lucky, but it was less complex of a piece, but higher end on the stats for that piece, if that makes sense. So Like this one, for example, it's got multiple stats on it: defense, vitality, and +2 attack. I think it was, and the shape is not too bad to kind of fit in anywhere. You don't leave any holes, so it's
Yeah.
easy to optimize, kind of min max. But then you go out, and if you die with it, then the piece is gone because you couldn't save it after you got the piece. You're stuck with whatever you had starting into the first stage of that, that kind of world.
Right.
But otherwise, the
can't go
mechanics,
back
I gave it a 1.
You can't go back and loot your body or anything.
That's right. Right. So but still overall, the mechanics, I gave it a 1. I really enjoyed kind of that aspect. Never really seen it before. It's pretty unique as far as trying to adjust stats between defense and vitality and attack and or how many potions you're carrying. After a while, I found out that there's no place to like sell anything, so I ended up just starting pitching all the weapons except for maybe one of the larger sword that I found, and then maybe keeping one of the daggers in case with the piece swap I had a 2 slot open but not a 3. I could maybe run with a dagger that gave me just slightly more damage versus the sword gave you a little bit more.
Right.
So the mechanics were 1. The controls I really couldn't fault. I gave the controls a 1 also.
Okay.
The game has the game has a turn-based mechanic. So and I think the author did it in a pretty elegant way, and I've seen this in other games before, but when you're by yourself, if you notice when I'm alone, then I will be kind of sliding around, right? I'll just be like walking like any other maybe dungeon crawler. But the second that I get close to an enemy, you'll see me take pauses, and not all of that is strategic. As you start to get close to enemies, the turn system kind of kicks in, and you can only make one movement at a time or one action, whatever, at a time before the enemies get a turn. When you see me just jumping there's actually the skip function you see in the bottom right, where it says skip.
Okay.
The hotkey is spacebar, and I'm hitting that. So that's when your character jumps, I'm saying skip a turn, because I want to see if they move in front of me so I can get maybe that first strike kind of advantage. This NPC here, you could give him a piece, and he would redo the stats and give it back. And I found him in my journey maybe 3 or 4 times, and at no time did he actually give me a better item. He always made it worse. It was always worse. So that one was like +8 vitality and +2 to attack, and I got back a +6 vitality. One of them, so I tried putting in like a crappy item, that was just +1 to one thing, and see if I get more. But no, I just got +1 back of another stat. So I don't know exactly if that's supposed to be beneficial or I was just extremely unlucky. But so overall controls, they were very simple and very easy to kind of understand and use, as far as guerrilla tactics, moving away, trying to strategize around how the monsters attack to get in to close distance. I didn't find out how to actually throw some of the potions. The knife, the little 2-slot knives, you can actually throw those.
Yeah.
And I had it equipped, and I actually didn't figure out how to throw it until the end, where you actually pick it up on your mouse and click on it. Click on the enemy you want to throw it. And the same thing is for some of the negative effect potions. So somewhere in this clip, I actually died because I was using a poison potion, and I think I drank it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I drank it instead of like actually throwing it. So let's see, that's story, mechanics, and controls. For art, I couldn't find any fault with it. There was kind of little unique, idle animations or movement animations. There were unique creatures that didn't look like they were ripped off, from anywhere. The creatures in a lot of instances kind of matched the strength and or abilities, maybe the complexity of the character was matched in how it, and there's parity with how it looked. So there's a really small thing that looks like a small stick figure with a mask on or something, and it's got a unique charge ability, but otherwise it's pretty easy to defeat. But then there's a later creature that's a lot larger, and it's got like these 3 tentacle things on it. The creature just looks a lot more complex in animation and movement, and at least in how it tries to pursue you. and it poisons you and it sucks.
Okay.
There's a giant slug, and the giant slug has like a lot of defense, for example. But otherwise, as far as the yeah, the art, otherwise, I gave that a 1 as well. I thought it was pretty well done, and there wasn't anything that jumped out that's like, well, this shouldn't belong in the game. It doesn't match the other art.
Yeah.
And this was all done by one person as well, which I'll give credit to at the end. So,
well, and this is
most people probably
novel. In the recent RPG type games that we've looked at, they're all sort of formulaic, or they're all built with, what is it, Dungeon Maker, something like that. So this is
this one was actually
completely different.
Yeah, so this was actually this was done in Pygame and PyOpenGL.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool. I didn't research exactly what those were, but I'm assuming the Py is some type of Python framework.
Yeah, I assume so. If it's PY
versus using something that is, and maybe Pygame is not. Maybe Pygame is the same thing as Dungeon Maker, but just for Python. I don't know.
Right.
Let's see. For sound, I gave it a 1 as well. I mean, nothing was super awesome and flashy, but all the sounds fit, and the music seemed to be pretty okay. Yep. And the music changed when you were going from dungeon theme to dungeon theme, and there was adequate sounds for
a little bit, so it's not obnoxious.
Right. Yeah. Same thing with taking damage over time when you get poisoned, or when you hit another character, or when you gain hit points from some of the life leech kind of items. It just all kind of fit, and nothing jumped out as obnoxious or bad. So this is Skeletris. I think there are Skeletris made by Ghast, Ghast, who is credited for doing the art, coding, music, design, and concept. Made in Pygame and PyOpenGL, and there were 10. I think it said in here there's over 10 songs. Progress to checkpoints. So I don't know if that assumes that there's 10 worlds. Then if it's changing between, and maybe a couple less with boss engagements. But otherwise, that's Skeletris.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I dig it. I mean, I can see where it would get a little monotonous. It can't be too feature rich, but for what it is, I would say it actually is quite rich.
Here is the first boss, I think. Yeah. So the NPC gives you a hint to like attack when the monster's sleeping, or when it's at in a rest stage or rest phase. So look for the Z's. So I sat here and I danced with this thing, and I already died a few times getting here. So I'm questioning, do I have enough defense at 1? Do I have enough attack at 6? So I just finally popped a speed potion. I just went in and wrecked it. And I'm like, well, I just wasted all that time trying to over preparing when I just wrecked it. But that was the first boss. So check it out. From a cost perspective, if you're listening to this, go give it a try. It's a pay what you want download. So toss a couple of bucks. I think it's worth a couple of bucks
for sure.
And like you said, I think it maybe might get monotonous, but at the same time, I don't think that the game is really long enough to. It's not like you're playing 7, 10, 20 hours worth of content where the only thing that's changing is the background and the song.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot shorter than that. So give Skeletris a try, and toss a couple bucks to the owner. Out of some of the other games and stuff that we've done, it's pretty polished for what it is.
Toss a coin to,
and the concept is great. So
let me pull up my video as well then. All right, and my title is called Ganbare, Super Strikers. Ganbare is a soccer game. Be a bit loud. And it's It's a soccer game, right? But it does have some aspects to it. It's got multiplayer. It's got a single player tournament. It's got this story mode, which story, right? But there are a lot of cool customization options to the game, which I was kind of impressed by. And I think what's interesting or unique about this particular one is that there's this tactical RPG aspect where you have equipment and upgrades. I mean, very much like Skeletris, right? So I can outfit my characters with upgrades over time, and there are special abilities that my players can unlock over time, where they get basically like these spell attack abilities, like a freeze pass or a sleep kick or something like that, which you'll see as it gets into gameplay affects everything. It's actually pretty detrimental. So for art, I actually gave this a 1 because, as you can see, there's a lot of I actually didn't show you this part, but there's customization for the characters, so you can pick your jersey, your color, your head. You know, there's changes you can make there. And then the art itself is actually kind of an anime effect. It's pretty cool looking. And again, I didn't show this particular aspect, but you can actually rotate the screen. I didn't notice this until later, but you can rotate the screen. You see arrows in the lower right and left hand turn, or lower right and left hand corner of the screen. And so you can rotate the screen on this three-dimensional axis, and it lets you see the nets a little better. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this particular soccer game is, and this gets into mechanics and ultimately control, but it's a turn-based game. So you see the grid that we're playing on, and you see sort of the effect of action, reaction. This is all based on, I click a player, I select an action, and then effectively a roll of the dice occurs in the background that determines whether or not you're successful with this game. And in this case, this is that was an ice pass. See, so my guy got iced. And they're out of the game for like several rounds. It's pretty tough when they get iced. So it's not from mechanics. I gave it a 0 because it's hard to play like a sports game like this that it's just not very reactive. Like, it's not very fast. So I didn't much dig for that, but the controls were simple enough, and you can see here, like, there's a lot of manipulation. I click my character and it gives me indications of how I can move, what types of move I can take, and it's very simple point and click type interface. There's not a whole lot going on there, and sometimes you get options in the bottom of the screen to choose like special abilities. You can see down there, move and skills. So the controls were simple enough. I enjoyed that. There's a couple bits and pieces in here that you see about story, but really it's all just an excuse to play in a tournament. And so ultimately what's happening is every time you start a tournament, you meet a character, and that character has some personality, and so you have a conversation with them, but it's always like real, I don't know, sort of a kid-friendly interaction where you're like, hey, why are you so sad? Well, I lost my last game. Cheer up, it's going to be better this time. You know, that kind of interaction going on.
What's the SP and MP?
SP...
Or AP?
I don't see it. Yeah, okay. So SP and AP, AP is your spell abilities. So like you have the ice pass, and so they take different amounts of AP and they recharge over time. And so as you use your abilities, you lose that. And so you can only do as much as you have AP for. SP, I don't remember what these stand for, but SP effectively is your energy level. And when it reduces to 0 or close to 0, you become exhausted, and your character starts, like the roll that you see happen. So when I kick this, you'll see, let him pass it here. Yeah. So when he kicks it, you're going to hear kind of a roll, and you're going to see right here an attempt that he tries to block it. Well, if I'm exhausted, he gets more bonuses on that block. So it affects my ability to perform the tasks. So this part of the game is kind of interesting because you're shooting goals, but it's completely by luck. you click a direction that you want to kick the goal, or if you're defending, you click a direction that you want to defend the goal. And there's no visual or pattern that I could discern that you need to memorize in order to get these right. It just feels completely random. Now, as it happens, I got most of these right. I have no idea how. So I was able to defend against most of their goals, and I was able to land most of my goals because it trades off. And I have to admit, I don't know all the rules of soccer, so that I don't know if it's normal that both teams get to do like this penalty kick kind of thing at the end of the game to determine the winner. But we were tied in the end, and that's why we had to do this, I guess.
Yeah, like a shootout.
Yeah. And I won. I didn't like the randomness because it just felt like, wow. And here's the story play, so you can kind of see, hey, cheer up, that was one hell of a match. And then here's our level up, which also gives me items that I can then equip to my characters, which gives them bonuses, gives them spell abilities, so I can start to gain some new capabilities. And you can see here, you kind of get bonuses based on using it, or based on how well you performed in the game. So that's kind of Ganbare in a nutshell. If you like sports games, then you will probably enjoy this. It's cool, but it's not as fast and it's not as fast and reactive, I guess, as you would expect most of these. So there's a lot less reaction timing or combo move kind of stuff. But if you also like the ability of kind of leveling up your players and getting these special abilities, it reminds me just a tad of NBA Jams, if you remember that game. What I liked about NBA Jams was that you'd be on, he's on fire, and your ball's on fire and you're shooting from half court. And so I liked some of that kind of stuff in my sports games. So this one gave me a little bit of that other element that I appreciate, but I still wanted it to be a little bit faster paced. Now, what I didn't do, and I should have, is play some multiplayer to see how it fared when you had two different people controlling the characters. But because it is turn-based, my feeling is that it probably is going to be still pretty sluggish for you to go through. So in the end, Art 1, Mechanics 0, Controls 1, Story 0, Sound 1. The sound was fine. So I gave it 3 out of 5 in the end. And I should mention it. This is Super Strikers by Rese. And it's, I might say it's a soccer drama with a bit of a twist, that tactical RPG. And I did find out that Rese is actually out of Melbourne, Australia. So I thought it was unexpected. An Australian developer who specifically is targeting like a Japanese 32-bit flair in the games that he develops. Very specific. And this was his first game. So I'm actually really impressed that this is the first game, because it seems pretty well thought out, pretty well designed. So they also likened it to something referred to as Captain Tsubasa, which is an anime comic that is just like, it's a Japanese soccer anime comic. So a very specific thing that he was filling in.
Oh, that's like I said, pretty impressive for the first game.
Yeah, I think that's true. All right, so that was our lineup today. We will find out what our lineup is next week. Until then, good game.
GG.